Cool. So, Lina, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me in your lovely house. So, tell us a little bit about what you do. You have a pretty interesting story. You're a mother of 3.
Yes.
I'm not a mother of anyone. And just that itself is like, I need to interview you. What is that? How is it?
Crazy.
But not only that, but you like your story about how you became a mother of 3.
Yeah.
You know, it was kind of like a roller coaster. So tell us a bit more about that story.
Sure. So I didn't really think about having children until I was about 35, and I was married for a couple of years then, and my husband and I decided, there was always this myth of like, around 35 your fertility just drops off a cliff, so let's get started. But because both of us came from a pretty big family, I'm one of 4, he's one of 3, we never really thought it was going to be an issue, and I pretty much always delayed the thought of it because career was so important to me. And it was always the focus I had in my 20s, early 30s. It was all about building my career, educating myself, higher education and all that. And when we embarked on it, we thought it was going to be easy, and actually it was very hard. We had multiple pregnancy losses, one quite late stage at 6 months. And then I think the trauma of all of that really affected particularly my ability to just be calm throughout the whole process and then conceive again. So it took us a year to then eventually conceive our first daughter, and that whole pregnancy was very difficult, and she was then born very premature at 32 weeks. So we were then in the NICU for a very long time. So it was by no means an easy journey, and from beginning to end of us having our first child, it was over 3 years. But then after having our first daughter, we were very blessed to then have 2 other children fairly in quick succession. So now we have 3 kids.
Were the pregnancies similarly difficult?
The second one was the complete opposite. It was totally fine. Everything was fairly normal. And she was born by elective cesarean, and the third one was premature again, but not that premature. It was around 37 weeks and 1 day, so he had just reached maturity, and he was born. But that whole process made me become really acutely aware of the current care pathways that are available for women, and I realized that just a lot of care that women get now is extremely reactive in nature. So typically a woman is struggling for a number of months or years even before she seeks help. And a lot of the times the help that she gets is extremely fragmented. It doesn't really look at her physical well-being as well as her mental health well-being. And I think in this particular phase of women's health, the two is really intertwined. And the more we can help women navigate those, the more important it is. So once we emerged from all of that, my husband has a tech background. We thought there's got to be a way for us to think about using technology to really improve women's journey through this phase of their lives.
Their experience of having a child.
Yeah, exactly. And are there ways that we can use technology to completely break down the barriers of access, make it a lot cheaper, a lot easier for women to get to the specialists that they need, and also to really close the knowledge gap in this area, because I think unfortunately there's so much of women's health, and particularly women's health challenges, that are shrouded in taboo. So women don't talk about it, and they don't get the help that they need when they need it, and very often they will have been struggling for a long time before they actually really need to get help, or they really get to access the help. So that was kind of the early days of Adia. So we both embarked on it. We got into an accelerator program, and now we've been operating for about just over a year. And women that come to us, we enable them to connect with obstetricians, fertility specialists, mental health experts, nutritionists, everybody who really understands the woman, with no GP gatekeeper. They come, they fill out a very easy kind of questionnaire that then allows us to signpost them to what we think they most need at that moment. Sometimes people come and they really need mental health support, they get to have that first. Some come and really need nutrition support, they get that, or some just really need to speak to somebody who's very knowledgeable about medicine, and we enable that too.
Mm-hmm. So is this like a private kind of health system that you're creating?
Well, now it's direct to consumers. We don't. A lot of it actually is still free. We provide that for free. We also deliver hormone tests, sperm tests. Those are paid for. So we try to deliver as much of the content and the education for free, and then some products they'll pay for. And really kind of our mission and goal is to help women be proactive about their reproductive health and throughout these different life stages. So we started with fertility, but soon we'll be adding post-pregnancy and hopefully kind of helping handhold women all the way to perimenopause and menopause.
Do you think that also there is a lack of knowledge about like what happens to our bodies when we have a child?
There's a knowledge gap, absolutely. We definitely find that. We find that a lot of women come to us, and a lot of the support we get is around just empowering them with the knowledge. There's a lot of women who don't know that they should be taking folic acid when they're trying, and then once they are pregnant, a lot of women just really only start thinking about taking some of the supplements after they've fallen pregnant. But folic acid, which is one of the most important ones, you should be taking it in advance. How important actually the male factors are, and making sure that your partner also is tested and is taking care of his nutrition. And then everything that happens during pregnancy and post-pregnancy, both the mental and the physical. Like, there's a lot of misunderstanding around what that happens. And if you go to Dr. Google, it's scary, right? So and that's for us, all the content that we've built on Adia has been written by doctors. And that was a real point for us, was to kind of take all this myth out and really give people trusted information. Because I think there is a big knowledge gap there. I mean, we've been spending way more time preparing ourselves not to have children than preparing ourselves to have them, and realizing the challenges that women will encounter in them. Like if you think about pregnancy loss, the reported numbers mean that 1 in 4 pregnancies will end in loss. That's a very high,
huge.
Which basically means that if you are a woman, it's 25%, right? If you're a woman trying to have multiple children, chances are you're probably going to miscarry at some point. And a very recent study that got released by actually one of the doctors that work with us went to show that women, even if they just miscarry once, 70% of them go to develop PTSD. Right, and PTSD can really affect
your chances to
that and how you operate in your work, in your relationships and everything, and just the pure fact that some women might not even be aware of those symptoms and what the cause of that can be is extremely debilitating too, right? And and it's funny because now that I look back, I remember, we really struggled to have our first child, and then she was born and she was so premature, and I remember just being, the first 3 months just being extremely difficult. Like I always kind of having that feeling that I was going to do something wrong and I was going to kill her or something.
So fragile.
And then you start looking at some of the mental health symptoms. You're like, oh my gosh, like, was I struggling with PTSD? Because having gone through all that trauma of loss.
How do you feel as a woman after having a miscarriage? Like I think I can only imagine, but I know that the first thing that comes to me is, my body doesn't work, or I'm not a woman because I wasn't able to create what I'm supposed to be able to create. I'm a misfunctioning woman. Am I really a woman?
Well, I think that's you actually hit it right on the spot, and that's the majority of how women feel, I think, is that you were prepared, your body's prepared to do this, and you've spent your entire 20s avoiding it because you were taught that, like, if you have sex once, you're going to get pregnant. Exactly.
And now you're just supposed to have one like that.
And then it doesn't work, and you're like, oh my gosh, like, and it is completely normal to blame yourself and to feel extremely ashamed. And I think then a consequence of that is that you don't talk about it, right? And there's this 12-week rule that happens a lot where you get pregnant and you're not supposed to tell people that you're pregnant for the first 12 weeks. And the reason being because...
You don't want to celebrate too early.
And the reason is because a lot of women, most miscarriages will happen in the first 12 weeks.
Yeah.
But if you think of a woman that actually miscarries during those 12 weeks, she has created no support system for herself because she hasn't told anybody. Probably the only person that knows is her husband or maybe her direct family. So suddenly you're dealing with something that is extremely hard, but you have no support system. And then you're having to tell friends that like, oh, I've miscarried, but they didn't even know that I was pregnant. So it's, you know,
can't really even say
or
it.
at work, nobody knew because you're not showing, and you know, how do you then navigate all of that? So it becomes very difficult for you to navigate all of that,
like a mental maze.
Yeah, exactly. And it was through this process, and it happened to us twice. And you know, the first one kind of, I was already showing, and it was very obvious that I had lost the pregnancy. That I really went to realize that how there was this disconnect between physical health and mental health. Like I'd go to see doctors, and they found out the reason why I was losing my pregnancies. So I was able to at least tackle that, but there was very little talk about how to help me emotionally.
How do you feel?
You know, and how to navigate all of that, right? So I think, that's why it's so important to be able to support women both emotionally as well as physically, because it's not just one or just the other, right? Like you can go see a mental health expert, but if you have a lot of questions about how your body functions and what to expect, that in itself can be extremely disempowering. So being able to have those two to support you through is something that is extremely important. So the miscarriages basically, it made me feel very, I lost a lot of confidence in myself, physically, emotionally, and I had to kind of teach myself how to come out of all of that. It was kind of like a total life change. I ended up training to become a yoga teacher, and that was part of my process of trusting my body again and building strength again. I did a lot of nutrition courses, and that again was the process of re-educating myself on what worked nutrition-wise or not. And then I was extremely lucky to have a medical team that really kind of took a very proactive approach to my health and made me do a lot of tests, try to get to the bottom of it, of why is it that I was losing my pregnancies, if there was anything that I could do differently. And that's what we hope to be able to deliver to women through the Adia platform, is enabling them to do tests earlier to understand their fertility, them and their partners, hand-holding them along the journey of mental health as well as nutrition, and wherever possible getting them the right information for their body, so that people can feel more empowered, particularly women, as they're going through this.
How did it work for your husband? Like, what? I'm sure it affected him, obviously.
Yeah.
How did you guys, as a couple, resolve this?
Yeah, I mean, it's if we think that the topic of infertility is taboo for women, it's even more taboo for men.
Wow.
And I think because there's even less support, I think, for men to share that, and I think too, so often men will feel like they need to be the strong kind of part of the equation and not show their vulnerabilities, when it's very difficult for them too. And particularly for my husband, who always dreamed to have a big family, it was very hard for him. And it was tough. There were times that our relationship got quite strained, and I think what worked was we always made a commitment to communicate. And we try to communicate through letters, we communicated through talking, we communicated using also a coach. And to kind of always keep that dialogue happening, and we read a lot of books also on coping with grief and how that affects a relationship, because I think the way men process their grief can be quite different from the way women process their grief, and enabling each other to have that space and the knowledge that just because he's not talking about it doesn't mean that he's not in pain.
Feeling anything,
So I think that was probably one of our biggest tensions, was I always felt like I needed to talk about it, and I was processing it, and he was quite quiet about it. It was recognizing that was all part of us each taking our time to process it. And then he also, he took a lot of proactiveness to it. So he took his supplements. So he was part of the journey. I never really kind of felt, and I think sometimes there are relationships where there's so much expectation placed on the woman, but not on the men. and he definitely wanted to be part of that journey. So he read up on things. He took care of his health, and it was all part of something that we did together. And I think that helped us in our relationship. But
Of course,
I think that's not always the case, that it'll happen to couples.
I mean, there are other women out there who have had miscarriages and, had to go through their own thing, but didn't necessarily decide to create a business around it after and launch something. So what is it? Was there like a moment for you where you were like, you know what, I want to go into this?
Yeah.
Can you tell us
elaborate on
about that?
Yeah. I mean, I think I've always my husband is a serial entrepreneur, and he's always wanted to solve big problems and have big impact. And I think this experience that we had really fueled us, because it really irked us in terms of how things could still be so backwards, and particularly for women. So we talked a lot about it, and it's a tough decision to decide to be an entrepreneur when you have 3 kids, and, stability and income. But I think we really believe that it's a problem worth solving, and whether it's our personalities of really wanting to make a difference, we thought, okay, well, let's at least give it a shot. And when we decided to do it, we kind of, and I think it's really important for entrepreneurs to just have a time frame and really understand what their finances are during that time frame and give themselves milestones. So we kind of mapped all that out, and we said, okay, we can try this for X number of months at this salary or no salary, and kind of be very disciplined about that. And I think the fact that we have 3 kids makes us be extremely disciplined about that. But we were very lucky in that. I think we started the business. We very quickly got into an accelerator. Off the back of that accelerator, we raised our first round of funding, and then we were able to hire a really great team, and then we had our second round of funding. So it all kind of worked out. I think if we hadn't raised that first round and the second round of funding, maybe the business wouldn't have been around, because we would have had to be really disciplined about whether we were doing things that were moving the needle. But it's, I think it hit a chord. What we were solving was a problem worth solving. Women were finding us. People were giving
resonated with it.
Yeah, it resonated. They were using the product. We gathered a really great group of investors, a great group of experts, and a team that's really committed to making this work and make this, have real impact. So it all kind of escalated to something very positive.
Cool. So what was the biggest challenge for you in terms of going into the business side of things?
It's always the tension between product, resources, and team. Because if you don't have the capital, it's very hard to hire the right resources. Without the right resources, it's very hard to develop a product that people really like. So how is it that you end up kind of balancing all of those acts? And it is literally a balancing act across all 3 of them. But that was the, I think in hindsight, there are some positions I would have hired earlier. Some positions I probably wouldn't have focused on as much, but it's that kind of constant iteration. Because I think if you have the right team, you can deliver the right product.
So what, to come back a little bit to the topic of fertility, what would you tell women? Like, for example, take me. I'm like your perfect avatar. Avatar Chloe. What would be your go-to advice? Like for me, where because you're saying instead of starting to kind of like take care of yourself when you find out that you're pregnant, there's actually a lot of things that you could do before. To support you in that journey, to make the journey easier. So I'm all ears.
So, and I think there are 2 probably main things or 3 main things I think I say to my younger self or to you is one, do some of the fertility tests early. Like you can get them. I mean, you'd have to pay for them privately, but the NHS will make you wait a whole year of trying before you get those done. And
Wow.
it's just I think, even if it's for peace of mind, a check in the box of, okay, I am on this trajectory and I'm fine, right? Because, but if, like, let's say you realize that your fertility is a lot lower, or that might change the way you think about when you want to have children. So I think just owning that data for yourself and for your partner is important. It'll be more empowering than feeling like you're kind of been dealt cards that you can't change at all, right? So I think one is just kind of understanding your fertility in the grand scheme of things. And then I think two, one of the most important things is the health of your pregnancy doesn't start when you fall pregnant. It starts 3 months before that, right? So it takes 3 months for your body to recruit the egg. It takes 3 months for your body to create the sperm. And it's in that you're really kind of dictating the health of your pregnancy. So when you're starting to think about wanting to have children, start changing your lifestyle, start thinking about those, taking supplements, all of that. I'd say 6 months before, even a year before, start looking at, and there are enough science and research to show that there are components that really help a woman's fertility. So making sure you're taking your folic acid, vitamin D, omegas, high levels of antioxidant. I think it's really important for men to test their sperm also, to understand, because over 50% of subfertility are actually male factors. So it's not all the sperm that can actually fertilize an egg. So motility, morphology, count, it's also really important that men do that. So kind of approach fertility with kind of data and lifestyle. So really understand where both of your bodies are, if you have a male partner, and then if you are going to start trying, then also think about these interventions 6 months earlier. And then last but not least, like, recognize that if things don't go right, or in the time frame or the plan that you have, that it will have a mental health strain.
To perhaps have a conversation
early
on,
or just recognize yourself, like, if I'm going to be feeling stressed about it, what are the things that work for me to not be so stressed about it?
So what would you tell a younger version of you, or younger women who are wanting to start their own thing?
I mean, I think two things. I think to be an entrepreneur, the problem really needs to be a passion. I think some of the more successful, and I don't even put myself in the category of being successful, but it's exactly to your point. I think it just takes so much sacrifice, and it is something that you will be thinking about all the time, that it needs to be something that you're really passionate about solving, or passionate about having an impact and spreading the word, or whatever it is, like, because that constant in your head can't be something that bothers you a lot. Like, it needs to be something that you're kind of, it can be hard, but it needs to be exciting to solve, right? So I think start a business in something that you're really passionate about, because it is a roller coaster. And I think two is, as much as possible, be very, very pragmatic and very disciplined with yourself about the milestones, and how much can you afford to be on that path, right? Because money is a concern, and maybe if I had started Adia, if I had started Adia like 20 years ago, I wouldn't have that as a, maybe I wouldn't have been that disciplined. But with kids, with home, with school, all that stuff, like, we need to be really disciplined about money, and how much we can afford to stay on this entrepreneurial, which I think is good and bad, right? Because it maybe shortens that time frame of testing, but I think also gives you that, like, laser sharp.
Yeah, it gives you focus. Yeah, it gives you a structure. Otherwise, you're just like la la la.
Yeah, exactly.
It will happen when it will happen. Deadlines.
I know.
I use a lot of deadlines. I have loads of articles
all about
that
deadlines.
I write where I'm like, guys, it's all about deadlines.
And it's metrics and being disciplined. I think.
How
it's
do
like,
you get
it's
shit
really,
done? Deadlines.
Yeah, exactly.
And someone who's gonna check on your deadlines.
On deadlines.
Accountability.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And then I think it's just recognize that it's going to be a roller coaster. I mean, I have days that are just amazing, and then there are days that it's very hard, and that's why it needs to be a work of passion, because it's like that.
It's up and down. Yeah.
Yeah, like within a week, within a day.
It's like a kid. It's like a
crazy.
kid, you know. 1 hour.
Totally irrational.
1 hour, you know, he's all lovey-dovey, and then the next hour he's crying.
You're throwing a big tantrum.
Throwing a tantrum. You're like, God, I love you, but right now, you're just
driving me nuts.
Totally.
Yeah.
Awesome. So my last question for you is, what is a cool girl?
Mm-hmm.
What's your interpretation of a cool girl?
I mean, I think if I were to, the way I'll answer this question is because I have 2 daughters. It's kind of, you know, what is the message that I want them to be able to have when they're growing up? And I think a key message I want them to have, to be cool, and what that represents to me is really to have resilience, and not to let things that don't go your way or that make you sad make you feel debilitated, and to really kind of turn that experience into something that can make you grow and make you a better person. You know, and I think the experience we had with the pregnancy loss, with you know, the trouble conceiving and all that, it could have crushed us. But you know, we really try to make the most out of that experience, to turn it into something that made us grow, be stronger, and be better as humans now, for ourselves, for our children, and for our community. So is find that resilience and find that learning in the tough situations and make the most out of it.
Be cool.
Yeah.
Stay cool.
Yeah, that's the
awesome
message.
Yeah. So what it takes to be a cool girl: resilience.
Yeah. Learn from that and be resilient.
Awesome.
Grow.
Thank you so much, Lina.
Thanks for having me.
YouTube hug.